All right, hello YouTube. I just wanted to talk a little bit about this whole global warming, climate change nonsense. Um, People ask me,
You don't believe in science?
well, the problem is I'm a little older than probably most of the people who ask me um, whether I believe in this stuff or not, global warming and climate change and everything else. The problem is when I was a kid, back in the 70s, because I'm 47 years old, so I actually have a memory of times before now. When I was a kid, what I remember was hearing about the coming ice age. Ooh, very scary. And this was in the 70s when actually Earth Day began in what, 1970? So around that time, of course, this is when we first started hearing about this idea of global cooling. We were headed for a big ice age, and you can look at there's plenty of stuff online. Of course, most people, and there's all these references to different articles that back this up starting in 1970 all the way up to 79. And this was all global cooling now. So they were talking about an ice age when I was a kid. So that was the big scare back then. Oh my God, it's going to get freezing cold. Oh, goodness gracious. So we had, for the 70s and into the 80s, we were scared about global cooling, a coming global ice age. And then when I was older, in the 80s and in the 90s, I first started hearing about global warming. So we changed from global cooling to global warming. Then, after that, not too long after that, by the early 2000s, we were hearing the expression or the term climate change. So what does this tell you? Okay, this tells me, as a thinking human being, that we don't have a clue. All of this stuff, and this really annoys me, they'll say, oh, the science has been proven. The science has been proven. It's indisputable. Indisputable proof. This whole indisputable proof thing. Well, guess what? They had lots of indisputable proof back in the 1970s that this was going to happen. Okay, they had all this chilling proof, right? And then global warming comes along, so they changed the entire concept from cooling to warming. And then when they finally just gave up and realized they don't know what the hell they're talking about, they changed it to climate change, which is an all-encompassing term rather than these more specific terms. So when you say this is indisputable science, then why does it keep changing, every 15 years or so? Obviously, it is not indisputable science. It is a hypothesis. Just like the Big Bang, just like evolution. Those things are all theoretical. They are hypotheses. Yes, educated hypotheses, I'm sure, and etc. But nonetheless, they are still hypotheses, which means they are not facts. Same thing with this. So if somebody asks you about this, ask them why it keeps changing. The story's been changing. Now, of course, people who weren't alive back then are not going to know that this even existed, that this was ever a scare. So, of course, if you're targeting the younger generation who doesn't know any of this and doesn't have the history, recollection, so to speak, then, of course, they're not going to believe you even. They're going to think, oh, no, that's crazy. Who would have said that? They've been saying global warming and climate change my whole life. Well, yeah, and in my whole life, they've been saying everything from global cooling to global warming to climate change, which tells me that I can't really trust this. Human beings are not as smart as they think they are. Okay, so all these people talking about this is indisputable science, I don't believe it. I just can't. And the quote I always hear is there's a 97% agreement or consensus on this issue. That means there's 3% of people out there, scientists out there, who still don't think that it is caused by humans. The whole idea of CO2 being a dangerous thing is ridiculous as well, because it's one of the things that provides us with life on this planet. So I don't know. It's crazy. So either way, I think that this is pretty much nonsense. And it's just simply a way, and this whole climate change accord thing that they were going to do was a way to basically redistribute wealth. That's one thing. It was a way to keep us more broke than we already are by increasing taxes on everything. I do know that we are causing damage to the planet, at least on a small scale. The world's poisoned. But, there's other things to worry about, like Fukushima and things like that, but nobody's talking about that. Instead, they're talking about these abstract hypotheses. Climate change. Oh, it's very scary. So anyways, again, if you do a search, if you want to do this, I'm not gonna put a link up, but I will just tell you, simply type in the coming global ice age 1970s. And guess what? That's going to bring up, tons of stuff. There's all sorts of magazine covers, tons of articles. So again, this was the paradigm, so to speak, back in the 70s. by the 80s and 90s, we were now going to warm up, and then eventually we just gave up on all those ideas of cool or warm and just said it's going to change. That's, again, an example of linguistic manipulation. We go from specific to all-encompassing when we realize we really don't have a freaking clue what we are talking about. So, anyways, y'all have a great day, and keep on thinking free, and I will see you on the flip side. Watch out for the global warmer people. They are excited, and the climate change people too. Of course, I don't think we have to worry too much about this. There's other issues at hand that are much, much more pressing. All right, take care. Have a good one.